My guest on today's podcast is Ben. Ben saved aggressively so he could retire at the age of 53. And although he's really enjoying retirement, he's finding it's very difficult to spend money on certain things. As he's gotten older, he realizes that his healthy years won't last forever, and he also shares a new system that he's implemented that actually makes it easier to spend money on certain things. Listen in as Ben shares his secrets for what's worked and how it's led to some amazing memories that he wouldn't have experienced otherwise. It's all coming up next on today's episode of Ready for Retirement. Joining me on today's episode of Ready for Retirement is Ben. Ben, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, James. Glad to be here.
Well, let's jump right in. You're retired today, but take us back to when you retired and what you did for work prior to retiring.
Okay. I was a account rep for a manufacturing company here in the Cleveland area. That was pretty much my career for most of my adult life, 28 plus years. And I was probably in my mid 30s when I decided that I was not going to want to work till I was 65 or 70. So I kind of put a seed in my brain at that point that 50 might be a great time to try to retire early. And that was long before, there's much talk about the FIRE movement or the ER movements, things of that nature. But that was sort of the goal that I set. And I was very, strict about not denying myself anything, but I also made savings a priority. So due to the market downturn in '08, that set me back just a bit, but I kept plowing right through. I kept investing monthly through all of that. I never panicked, never cashed out. So at any rate, I retired at 53, 2017.
53, very good. What was it in your mid 30s, Ben, that caused you to say, I don't want to work until 65? I'm going to do this thing at 50 if I can?
Well, unfortunately for me, it was more a matter of I don't think that I pursued a career that I loved. I pursued a career that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed the challenges of it. But it was never something that I just felt so passionate about that I just imagined myself working indefinitely. I have friends that are still working that just love their jobs. They can't imagine doing anything else, and they don't have any intention of walking away from them. But for me, it was like I couldn't imagine changing into another career at that point in my life. And I had already been involved in sales for quite some time. So I thought transferring to anything else besides sales was not going to be necessarily easy. So I just thought, well, maybe the next best thing is to just set a goal for early retirement. So that's what I did.
Very good. Now, you set that goal in your early 30s. Did that transform you in that moment to becoming a very aggressive saver and investor, or had you always been that way, even up until that point?
Um, I'll go way, way back to tell you a story that will give you an idea of what my mindset was. So I started doing odd jobs when I was a teenager. I was mowing people's lawns and taking care of people's pools, probably from the time I was like 12 or 13 years old. And I can remember I had I had several people, of course, that just paid me in cash. In those days, some people wrote checks, whatever. But I was so proud of the fact that I was making this money that I would actually launder the money in a sink and let it dry. And then I would iron the money so the bills were nice and crisp, and I would have them all sorted and all in the right direction. So I mean, from a very, very early age, the importance and the value of saving and earning money was quite apparent to me.
The original Monday laundering. I love that. So you this was
Yeah, that
ingrained
didn't
in
quite
you.
sound right.
No, hey, the little version of it. Was this something that was instilled into you by parents? Was this just something that you had a natural inclination for, being naturally a saver, naturally just very into setting money aside?
I think it came pretty naturally, but I mean, I grew up. I never realized how we grew up. I was raised by a single mom. I had two older brothers, but I never realized quite the sacrifices she made and what it took for her to raise three kids on her own until I was much older. But I always sort of had a feeling that money was a very important channel for us, and that it was something that I had to value and I had to appreciate. And yeah, it was something that it continued on as I got much older. Then, of course, but as far as like the inspiration to then, once I was an adult, become more of a saver and more dedicated to it. I actually had a conversation just with a friend who knew that I was taking off on this new career path, and he was suggesting to me, that have I ever considered investing money instead of just putting it in CDs or just putting it in the bank? And at that point, I hadn't. So that's when I first started to try educating myself on the stock market and on investing and on mutual funds. And that was sort of the very beginning of my adult saving trajectory, if you will.
So you had a handful of experiences that were maybe formative in the way that you viewed money. What was it at age? Was there a number in mind when you said, I want to do this at age 50? And it got pushed back till 53 because of 2008, but still very early. What was it that gave you the confidence that feel that you could retire? Was it having a certain portfolio balance? Was it a certain amount of dividends coming from your portfolio? How did you think about that?
It was pretty much based on the portfolio balance. What I had done, James, is once my career started to take off, I pretty much lived off of what I was making in the early years of my career. And as I progressed in my career, I was basically on a commission basis. So the harder I worked, the more effort I put forth, the better the benefit in terms of a salary. So what I started doing pretty early on is I just said each year I was basically going to live off of what I might have lived off of when I first started my career basically, and everything else was going to get invested. So that was sort of the number that I was using when it came to be time to retire. I thought, okay, well, so I can get my portfolio to this level, and I can sort of follow loosely the 4% rule at the time. That was what my goal was going to be. So it was pretty much a portfolio balance and knowing what I was able to live off of in previous years.
Yeah. Let's talk about that now. So you retired at 53. You hit that number. You did a great job of not suffering from lifestyle creep, so to speak, and continue to invest, continue to save. You retired. Was it everything you hoped it to be, or what was different about retiring compared to what you maybe were anticipating?
Oh boy, go down a lot of different paths on that one. But I think the hardest thing for me was realizing that I was sort of going to be the lone duck out there. Everybody that was in my social circle, my friend circle, they were still very much in the middle of their careers and still some cases growing their careers, still in wealth accumulation mode, still in spending mode. Building new homes, buying beautiful new cars, and maybe taking a 1 or 2 week vacation per year. But in terms of being completely free and available to just do whatever they wanted to do, that wasn't the case. So I realized very quickly that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be doing basically all of this alone. So all the things that I thought I might want to do, traveling, visiting family, friends, those types of things, it was going to have to be sort of strategic. It's like I can't just call up a friend and say, "Hey, I want to come out next weekend." They might have a lot of things going on. They're still working. They might be on a project. They have family commitments. So realizing that it was really going to be my journey and pretty much something I was going to be doing alone was something, for whatever reason, I just never really gave much thought about when I was still in my working years.
Yeah. When did that first hit you? Did you start to have that inclination, say at age 52, that you look around and no one else is really retired like you are? Or was it a little bit of a wake up call when you did actually retire?
It was more of a wake up call. I mean, I had so many people, they were supportive, but at the same time, I had so many people that just said, how can you stop working at 53? I mean, everybody thought that was such a crazy idea. And even friends that were looking at it from more of a monetary perspective, they'd be like, you're making this great salary now. You could be on cruise control for the next 5, 7 years and just bank all that money. Why don't you just, stick on and do what you're doing? And to me, that wasn't even appealing. It was like, no, that's not even something that I want to do. So it's kind of hard to not have a support system in place in some aspects, because people were just like, why would you walk away from that?
Yeah. What was appealing to you? If it can be tempting to say, I'm at the peak of my earnings, I'm in a job that I'm good at, even if I don't particularly love it, it's not appealing to continue. What was most appealing to you at that time when you decided to make the jump to retirement?
I think just having the ability to sort of plot my own course and not have to be on literally living on someone else's schedule when it comes to a career. I had tried to work remotely long before it was a thing. I had pushed with my company to let me work remotely. I used to have a townhouse in Las Vegas, and I thought it'd be great to get away from Cleveland winters and spend a month or two working remotely. And they shot it down year after year. I would propose it during my annual reviews, and they're like, nope, nope, can't do it, can't do it, we can't allow it. And I honestly think if they had allowed that, that might have bought me a little more time where I could have felt like I wasn't just constantly, commuting to the office and having to deal with, long days at the office behind my desk, behind my computer. It was more the logistics of what I had to do on a daily basis. I think if I could have tweaked what my job entailed, that might have had me stay on longer. I think it probably would have, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. So that wasn't an option. You decided to move forward with retirement. You're 53, you jump into retirement. What at that time were you envisioning retirement might be like, or what would you spend your days doing, at least in your mind, prior to doing so?
I think just the freedom of being away from a schedule, like I kind of mentioned before, was priority. And I did want to spend some time catching up with people that I had been friends with for years, but just didn't have the opportunity to see. So I spent a little bit of time doing some road trips and catching up with some people, visiting folks that I hadn't seen in quite some time, and that was pleasant. I got back into being a little bit more um, strict with a workout routine, taking care of myself, sort of self care. Joined a yoga studio, joined a gym. Um, Spent a lot more time biking than I had in previous years. It used to just be I would try to get out if the weather was nice on the weekend and I got all my chores done.
Hmm.
And it was just so nice to be able to wake up and say, okay, well, I'm gonna have a nice breakfast, and then I think I'm gonna go for 5 hour bike ride today. And just to not have a set schedule was so freeing.
Yeah. What's been the biggest challenge? So you have no set schedule. You can go on a bike ride if you want. You can go catch up with friends if you want, assuming of course they're available. You can uh, go travel if you want. All that sounds wonderful. What have been the challenges though that you faced in retirement?
Well, I think something that is a real issue for me is the spending issue. Giving myself, if you want to say, permission to spend the money that I've managed to save and earn, and I hate to say that I'm denying myself, but oftentimes feel that that's the case right now because I just look at my portfolio and I think, okay, this has the potential to open so many doors for me, but at the same time, bridging that mindset, that gap that is making that transition from a saving to a spending mindset, that I never anticipated happening in a million years. I didn't think about, other than thinking about that magic number and what I would possibly live on, each year. But then honestly, it was like it became a challenge to see, okay, well, I lived on about 4% of my portfolio this year. What if I do like 3.8% next year? And then it was like 3.5. It became ridiculous. I mean, I admit it. It was just like, why am I doing this to myself? But that's literally what started to happen. It's like I kept tweaking that number down a little bit. So that's by far, I think for me personally, probably been the hardest challenge. It's not so much I never feel bored. I never feel like I'm at a loss for something to do. But as far as looking at the potential for what my portfolio could unlock for me, that's been a hard thing for me to grasp.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I think a lot of people, it may sound ridiculous to someone that hasn't do it of how can you struggle to spend money, but it can be a real struggle. So for perspective, Ben, if you no need to share the numbers, of course, but do you remember what the portfolio value goal was, what that number was that would give you the freedom to feel like you could retire back in 2017?
Oh, my magic number?
Yeah. Do you remember what the magic number was without sharing it? Just do you recall?
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, I mean that
Your
number like blazed in my brain forever.
your portfolio today, is it larger than that magic number, the same as that magic number, or is it less than what that magic number was?
To be honest, James, it's approaching double
It's
in
approaching
7 years.
double. Would you say your spending has doubled since retiring? Or if you could throw a number out there of how much it's increased, decreased, or stay the same, what would that look like?
No, it's probably decreased. What I was doing, which I realize in hindsight is not the proper way to look at it, but I was taking the portfolio balance from when I retired And sort of if I plugged in that 4% number, I never did the inflation increases. And then if the portfolio had increased, I didn't change the amount that I was drawing from it. I just kept it consistent with what the value of it was when I quit working in 2017. So of course, it's continued to grow. And I know that there's like the rule of, I don't know if it's a 10-year rule, I can't quite remember what it is, but like that in theory, your portfolio could double in value in a 10-year period. And that certainly seems like I'm on track for that,
Yeah.
which is something else I never envisioned.
hmm Why, if you had to guess why that is, if you retired with a healthy portfolio balance at 53, it's since doubled to whatever healthy is, take healthy times two. Obviously, there's been inflation, things cost more, but still, portfolio's doubled. Do you have a sense of why it's so challenging for you to spend more as your portfolio balance increases?
I think part of it's not educating myself enough on just all the tax implications. I've been on an ACA healthcare plan since I retired, and I had always chased the subsidies. So I knew that if I had taken out more from my portfolio, that was going to look like income on paper as far as the ACA health insurance plans are concerned, and I would potentially lose my subsidy, which is quite significant. So I was sort of chasing a subsidy as a priority and trying to keep everything in check on paper. Now, this is the first year, I think I may have told you, but in January of this year, I finally sold off a small portion of my taxable portfolio. I did it in purpose to try to force myself to spend more money, like in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 year window is what I was telling myself. Give myself the permission to do it. Put the money in, basically a money market type account where it was easily accessible. Um, and I basically paid full price for my health insurance this year, which was a difficult thing for me to do. It's I look at that number and I just think this is crazy. But then I also look at my portfolio balance and I think not allowing myself to access that because I don't want to pay for my health insurance, full price for it is pretty ludicrous.
Yeah.
So I'm slowly getting the mindset right it needs to be, but it's still not quite there.
Hey, slowly getting it is the way to do it. It doesn't happen overnight. But how has that gone for you? You sold, and so for anyone listening that's not familiar with what does that mean? So if you keep your income under a certain threshold, you qualify for health insurance subsidies, which means it can save you thousands of dollars potentially on the cost of healthcare. With which, if you're not working, you're not yet Medicare age, it can be tremendously beneficial from a financial standpoint. The downside, on more of the emotional or psychological side, is do you feel like you're trapped in this low income environment or in this environment where you can't realize a lot of income because you're chasing a subsidy while simultaneously saying no to uh, great things you could be doing from a personal standpoint or things you could be doing with your money. So you took proactive steps at the beginning of this year to try to alleviate some of that by forcing yourself to say, I'm going to realize some income by selling some investments. So that's off the table. I can't trick myself, so to speak, and say, no, I'm doing this and it's going to be beneficial. How's that gone? Has that helped you to increase spending at all, or is it still the same challenge?
It has helped a bit. I've done a couple of things. I got together with my family and we had to do like a family vacation, and I picked up the tab for an Airbnb on the beach down in Charleston, South Carolina, for the whole family, so we could all be together for a week, and that was very enjoyable. I'm glad I was able to do that, and I actually just came back from a vacation. I went to Italy for 2 weeks on a cooking based type holiday, and I had literally booked the trip like a week before it commenced. I had heard about it over the winter, and I thought about it for just a moment, and then of course I looked at the price, and I thought, oh, I don't want to spend that kind of money. And then I found out that they had one single room left a week before the trip started, and they said, "Hey, if anybody can travel last minute, this might be a great opportunity for you." So I looked at my airfare options, and I made sure that they still had that room available. And I said, "Screw it, I'm just going to do this." So um, it was way out of character for me. It was something that in the past I never would have done. But honestly, once I got over there and I just saw how beautiful it was, I was like, "Okay, this was a good move. I'm glad I did this."
Is there any part of you that regrets it?
I struggled with the actual moment I was doing it. as far as like making the purchase, I literally had both windows open for the buy now button for the airfare and the buy now button for the reservation for the room. But and I probably spent a couple hours just going back and forth. I'm like, do I do it? Shouldn't I do it? Whatever. But once I made the decision, then I didn't regret it at all. And I kept thinking that I purposely set up those funds at the beginning of the year so I could do things like this. So I gave myself permission to do it, and once I made the decision, then there was no regret at all.
I think there's an important lesson in there for a lot of people. What happened at the beginning of this year? Because I think that's a genius idea. Trick your mind almost into saying, okay, I can't chase the subsidy anymore. I'm going to realize more income. Now I have permission to spend. What prompted that? Well, even that by itself is a decision to spend, so to speak, before the money is actually spent. How did you come to make that decision?
I think it was just a matter of staring at this portfolio balance and thinking, again, it could hold so much value besides just the monetary value as far as just life experiences. And why am I denying myself that? There's really no way around the fact that, at my age, I'm on an ACA plan. That's the only way I can have health insurance. And if I want to enjoy more out of life and enjoy more from my portfolio and what it can provide, then you're just going to have to suck it up and accept that this is what you have to pay, and don't even lose any more sleep over it. And I think I just got so tired after, basically 7 years of kind of I felt like everything was on pause. It's like, when am I going to make the moves? When am I going to start, feeling more comfortable spending what I've saved? And I think for whatever reason, over the winter, I just got to a point where it's like, let's do this year. Let's have this be a trial run. Let's see how it goes and see if we can kind of get that mindset turned around a bit.
Yeah. Have you noticed a change to the mindset as you've put yourself in those uncomfortable positions of booking a trip to Italy last minute, of getting the tab for the Airbnb for the family? Has your mindset started to shift as you've done things like that, or is it still the same battle internally?
I wouldn't say it's as much of a battle. I think the fact that I know that nothing is going to change in terms of the trajectory of my portfolio based on what I'm doing now, because I've pulled that money out separately. That's in a separate account. And as I do these types of things, yes, I'm going to chip away at that account. But in the whole big picture, I was thinking about this on the flight back. I had 8 hours to just ponder, life and what the next chapter was going to be. And I thought, that was pulling that money out to do the Italy trip was just, I could do multiple trips like that in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm, getting to the point where I'm like, okay, let's start thinking bigger picture.
Yeah. A couple questions. So what you're saying is it helped you to literally have that money pulled out ahead of time. So it doesn't feel like you're pulling money from your portfolio when you go book a trip. It doesn't feel like you're pulling money from your portfolio where you could probably really easily convince yourself not to. Pre-spending it by setting aside. Am I hearing you correctly saying that's made it easier to do some of these bigger purchases or make some of these bigger purchases?
Yeah, that made it much easier because, like when I booked the Italy trip, then all I did was set up a transfer, so that the funds would be in my checking account, so that I knew when the bills came due. Obviously everything is set up on auto pay, but then it was all going to be a seamless thing. So the money transferred, and the bills will get paid sometime later this month, and everything's going to all be done. It'll all be
Yeah.
taken care of. But yeah, you're right. And I think not having that separate little egg, if you will, or that separate little basket or bucket, for me, it makes a big difference mindset wise.
Yeah. I think that's a really good idea. What's next, Ben? So a great trip to Italy, Airbnb with the family. What are some of the things that you're excited for as you think about the next 5 to 10 years?
Ooh, 5 to 10. That's that's
Or
a
two to
tough call.
three. Your
Yeah, I was gonna
time
say
frame of your
I'm probably
choice.
yeah, I'm probably on a smaller scale there. I have a friend that is talking about doing a trip to Thailand next year. We just started having conversations about it this past week, and he's really got me excited because that's something that I've always wanted to do. But again, it's like just the airfare alone is quite significant, and I'm at a point in my life where I don't think that I want to sit in economy for a 16-hour flight, to Thailand. So I'm thinking, okay, well, how am I going to manage navigating, buying, at least like a business class or some type of fare that's going to make me comfortable for that time frame. But I'm excited about the prospect. I think that it's something that I can look forward to for next year. And I really want to also sort of get better about, I want to educate myself better about like the Irma look back periods and things of that nature. Honestly, until you and Ari had mentioned those things in your podcasts, those weren't even on my radar. So now I'm starting to think, okay, I need to figure out a strategy. I want to start doing some Roth conversions, but I don't necessarily want to do it right now. I was thinking about waiting until I'm Medicare eligible, and then having like maybe a 5 or 6 year window of when I would start doing conversions. Those are sort of a longer term plan. But as far as like just spending more money and experiencing more in life, I think I'm going to try to do more things where I incorporate perhaps inviting friends to go on a trip with me and helping to cover some or maybe even all the costs, depending on the situation. If it would help be a little bit more motivation for somebody to be willing to take a week off of work and travel someplace, and also kind of selfish because then I would have a travel partner.
Right. I think it's a
That's the other thing I
win-win.
didn't take into account was doing a lot of these trips alone. I've gotten very good at being a solo traveler, but it would be nice to have some experiences with friends as well.
Yeah. Well, it does seem obvious in this high level overview of that transformation, that shift has started to happen of becoming more comfortable, not so focused on lowering the portfolio withdrawal rate and more focused on what can this money do for me. I'm sure it's still going to be a journey. But if you could go back to Ben 7 years ago, or even Ben prior to retiring, what guidance would you give him to try to help make this shift happen sooner, or to go in with a little bit of a different mindset into retirement?
I would probably say that as dedicated as I was to being diligent with my saving strategy during my working years, I think having a similar strategy and being as diligent about planning for the future once I stopped working, and really sort of setting up a game plan of, like you were just asking me, like what's a 3 or 5 or 7 year projection looking like. I really wish I would have taken the time to say, by the time, this year happens, I would like to have experienced this and this, or I would like to, you know, I can now do all sorts of things that I wish I would have had more thought about in my working years as far as what the retirement was going to look like. But I think having a game plan in place would have made things a lot easier, and also just educating myself on the fact that it's going to be okay to take money from your portfolio. That's the whole reason you have it. That's the whole reason you save your entire life, is to now turn that money around and have it work for you and have it bring you experiences. And, just like I said, having a game plan would have been a wise move in my case.
Yeah. How much, say you did have that game plan. So in 2017, you know that in 2018, you're going to go to Italy. In 2019, you're going to do this great thing with family. In 2020, probably you're not traveling. 2021, you have, like, say you did have that game plan. Would that truly have helped, or would there still have been the mindset hurdle to get over of, I could lie to myself and say, I'm going to take this great trip next year, but then the time comes and it's still difficult to pull the trigger and make the purchase? What would that have been complete, or would there still been challenges to overcome as you work through that?
Well, I guess it's hard to say since I didn't have the game plan in place. I think probably even if I had the game plan, I think I still would have had these challenges, these mental challenges of giving myself the permission to spend money. Maybe it wouldn't have been as strong as it has been, but I still think that would have been a tough mindset for me to try to navigate through.
Yeah.
But I do think having a game plan would have been a little bit more inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think so too. And one of the things that you mentioned prior to this was, at some point, a certain fear kicks in of, these are the last, not the last, but I'm not promised an infinite number of healthy years. I'm not promised an infinite number of years where I have my energy and vitality and strength and ability to do so. How much of the decision to do some of these things today is, I don't want to say fear driven, but maybe reality driven of, I just can't do this forever, versus being driven by other purposes or other reasons?
Oh, I think that's a real driving factor for me. I mean, just all you have to do is look at the news or hear about a well-known person or a celebrity or whatever that has had a health issue or had something very debilitating happen to them, or even worse, they passed away at a relatively young age. And I think the fact that none of us is guaranteed an amount of time here has started to play into my decision making process and sort of kicking me in the butt and saying, look, you're still sort of at the tail end of the prime years, is what I like to think. So why not take advantage of the fact that you still have the interest in traveling, you still have the ability to walk around the city and explore, and don't just wait for a better opportunity to come along that's going to be a more more beneficial time to do things. Just start really pushing to do these things sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think death isn't something that anyone likes talking about, but there's a certain level of clarity you get when you realize nothing's promised. Tomorrow is not promised. If I were to go, what would I regret not doing? What can I begin doing now to uh, eliminate or at least neutralize some of those potential regrets? So, Ben, this has been very helpful. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of people feel silly sometimes thinking, I have done well, I have saved well. And I do have a spending problem, but it's not overspending. It's, if anything, underspending. And how do I address that? How do I get through that? So thank you for sharing. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap up today's episode?
I don't think so. I just wanted to thank you actually for everything that you've done online and on the podcast. I think that you're putting out just some of the best content available right now for anybody that's either already retired or thinking about retiring. I just appreciate everything you've done, and I'm glad to be a little tiny part of it.
Hey, well, thank you. I remember we started exchanging emails. I don't remember exactly when, but one of the first listeners, I want to say, a few years back, that you would send me emails here and there. So fun getting to connect with you and actually do this podcast. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I know a lot of people share similar challenges. And by the way, I think that what you said is simple, but very profound, of the fact that you take money out at the beginning of the year, put that in a separate account, so it already feels like the money's been spent. By default, it maybe gives you a bit more permission to actually spend it on airfare, on a trip. I think that that's one real simple thing that people can implement immediately and probably address some of the same challenges that they're facing.
Excellent. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, Ben, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the Ready for Retirement podcast. Appreciate it very much. And to everyone listening, thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, James.
Root Financial has not provided any compensation for and has not influenced the content of any testimonials and endorsements shown. Any testimonials and endorsements shown have been shared with each individual's permission, and are not necessarily representative of the experience of other clients. To our knowledge, no other conflicts of interest exist regarding these testimonials and endorsements. Once again, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients at Root Financial get the most out of life with their money, be sure to visit us at www.rootfinancialpartners.com.